Hey, it's Squidly. Today I want to share with you two stories of animal encounters that I've had. While not particularly dangerous, were at least enough to get my attention, the attention of the people around me, and I think any backpacker watching this can relate. So in 30 plus years of backpacking, I've had a lot of animal encounters. I've seen a lot. I've seen them mostly tail end going away from me. But the point is, I have seen a lot of animals. Have had a lot of animal encounters. In these two stories, both of these were at least enough to get the hair on the back of your neck to stand up and kind of get your attention. And so, just as a matter of coincidence, both of these stories happened on the same trip back in '04. So this is 20 years ago. So on this trip, I was with two guys. One was a really close friend, and the other one was a friend of my friend. He and I had never met before this trip. This was a trip to the Smokies, and we were on the Appalachian Trail, so we were basically going shelter to shelter. So what was going to be our longest mileage day of the trip, we left the shelter that morning, and the next shelter was only 2 or 3 miles away. It was close. And so we got to that shelter and we stopped. And the idea was we'll replenish our water, we'll sort of just kind of take a break for a second, make sure our legs are under us, and then get going because it was going to be a long day. When we got to the shelter, though, there was another group that was already there. It was a group of Swedes, and their English was perfect. They spoke fluently in English, but they spoke it with a heavy accent. So they were there when we got there, and they were there as we were leaving. But we were leaving probably not too far ahead of them, and we said, hey, maybe we'll see you down the trail. And they said, probably not. Y'all are going to be faster than us. I don't think they said y'all. So we get down the trail, maybe 30 minutes, something like that. And as we're hiking along, it is a steep uphill to our left, steep downhill to our right, and the trail running right along, and we're not going up or downhill. We're just sort of side-slabbing this giant hillside. And as we're going along, there is a rattlesnake right in the middle of the trail. And as we approached that rattlesnake, it coiled up right in the middle of the trail and started rattling. It was clearly angry and upset with our presence. Now, in defense of the rattlesnake, it turns out that this rattlesnake was recently divorced, and he owed a lot of alimony to his previous snakes, and he also had a couple of side snakes we didn't know about at the time. A lot of child support. As it turns out, he had hundreds of offspring. So this guy, he was really in for it. And because of the side snakes, he also had a couple of batches of eggs that were waiting to come along. This guy was really in for it. He was having a really extraordinarily bad day. And here we come to make it worse. And so this snake is coiled up in the middle of the trail and rattling, and we decide, you know what, this guy, he's not going to stop for a little while, and we probably just need to give him some space. So we back off, and we're waiting, and we're waiting. And the whole time, he just continues to rattle, just rattle, and never stops. In the meantime, this group of Swedes catches up with us. Now, in Sweden, I know they have snakes, but I don't think they have a lot of experience with our snakes and with venomous snakes and the kind of things that we deal with. So as they approached, we told them, hey, y'all stop right here. There's a rattlesnake up here that is pretty upset, and you don't want to get near it because if it bites you, you're going to have some problems. And their first question was, if it bites us, is it dangerous? And my answer was, if it bites you, you might not make it to the hospital. Now, that may or may not be true. It just kind of depends on the circumstance. But I wanted to make sure that they were taking it seriously. And so this group of 3 Swedes were waiting with us. So now there are 6 of us waiting for this rattlesnake to cool off. And we're just standing around having a conversation, just kind of shooting the breeze, waiting for the snake to cool off and stop being so angry. But he's like I said, he's having an extraordinarily bad day, bad season for this snake. And so he just won't quit. And so finally, among my group of 3, we decide we've got to go. This was our biggest mileage day, and we've got to get moving or we're not going to finish before dark. And so we decide we're literally going to touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. So we find a stick that's long enough and kind of sturdy enough. And the idea is kind of scoop under it and flip it off to the downhill side. Well, that worked sort of. And so I'm the one doing it. I've got this stick and I'm trying to get under the snake, and the snake is striking at the stick. He's just angry. He's thinking of all these young snakes he's got to provide for, and all these side snakes and all the extra eggs he's got coming, and he's just having an extraordinarily bad moment. And he's striking at the stick. I'm going to kill this stick. He wasn't killing the stick. And so I've got this stick, and the idea is I'm going to flip him off to the downhill side. And just as I do, I start to flip it, and the stick, the bottom of the stick, hits the top of a stump. And when it does, instead of flipping him off into oblivion, I flipped him maybe 2 feet. Now, he went a little bit downhill, but still, it's only about 2 feet away. And now he's really mad. And we only thought he was rattling before. Now he's super mad and super rattling, and he's just looking for anything to strike at. And because we've already attempted this one time, I don't think there's any chance we're going to get this snake with a stick. So now the idea is we're going to run one at a time past the snake. And maybe, hopefully, we'll be going fast enough that we'll all get past this snake before it has a chance to strike at us. And so one at a time, we all sprint past. So one person sprints past, and they go far enough that it gives somebody room where as they pass the snake, they're still in full sprint mode. And one by one, we all pass this snake. And the Swedes, especially when they go past this snake, they are going as fast as legs will carry you to try to get past this thing, because I think I kind of scared them with the idea that if it strikes you, it has the potential to be really bad and potentially life-threatening, which is true, but fortunately they took it seriously. And so in the end, it took us about an hour and a half to finally get past this snake and not get struck and continue on with our hike to finish what was going to be a pretty big mileage day, especially for the Smokies with all the up and down hill. So later on in the same hike, and it might have even been the next day, I don't remember for sure, it's been 20 years. So with that group of 3, we decided we were going to take a day where, yes, we would meet up for lunch, and we would meet up obviously at the end of the day at the shelter for camping that night. But we decided that during the day we were going to split up and not be separated probably by much, but everybody could hike at their own pace, and we would all just kind of hike separately. And so being introverted, I was really enjoying that day and enjoying hiking alone, even though I did enjoy their company, a couple of great guys. But as I'm hiking, I keep hearing something behind me. And I would hike along, and I would hear something rustling in the leaves, and I'd turn around, and there's nothing there. And I would just keep hiking, and a few minutes later, I'd hear something again. I'd turn around, there's nothing there. And so I would keep hiking. A few seconds later, I'd hear it again. I'd turn around, and there's nothing there. And so I completed kind of a rise, and it leveled off. And as I'm going on this leveled off portion of trail, I hear it again. And this time I turn around, and just below that rise that I had topped out on, I see a little round head and a couple of little round ears. And there is a black bear that might be 1 or 2 years old. It was young. This is not a mature bear hunting humans, but it was curious. It was curious about this person that it was following. And I decided that it did not need to be curious. That's a disaster scenario potentially for the bear, not because of what it will do to the person, but because if it becomes habituated to humans, then it becomes basically a death sentence for the bear. And so I turn around, and there's this bear just below that rise, and it has become, super curious, and it's following me, and I don't want to say pursuing, because I don't think it was really pursuing me. It was just curious and following me along. And so I decided, okay, I've got to turn around and make a big presence to scare this thing off and make a lasting impression on this bear's life, potentially in the long term to save this bear's life. And so I turned around and I did all the things you're supposed to do. Hands in the air, yelling out, "Hey bear," and took several steps. In fact, almost running a few steps toward it to sort of spook it off. And as I started to do this, that bear took off like a bolt of lightning. That bear was just crash, bang, crumple, all this stuff going through the woods and just crashing through foliage and leaves and stumps and logs. That bear was gone. And so I'd like to think that at some measure, I prevented this bear from getting too curious with people and potentially saved its life because it was getting habituated and comfortable with following people. Okay, so those are my two stories for today with animal encounters that I don't want to say were scary, but at least enough to get your attention and make you take animal encounters seriously. Do me a favor, in the comments, tell me something about one of your scariest or had the potential to be scary animal encounters, and let's have a conversation about that. I would love to hear other people's encounters with animals. Thanks for watching to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.